Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. Oh, man. This is a day. I tell you what, First of all, welcome aboard, everybody. And let me throw a special shout out to new channel member Roger Erickson. I don't know if you're in the chat now, but thank you for becoming a channel member. Um, I really honestly did not think that this video was going to spark so much. I hesitate to say outrage, but on a couple of people's parts, it was. I've had some interesting discussion in the comments, but man, some of my emails, I got called everything but a fellow human being. I mean, I had no idea. I got that far from cussed out for drilling holes in the spoil board. I mean, why would you do that? What are you going to do when those pins loosen up and start wobbling? It's like I have a CNC router. What I'll do is I'll just glue a piece of dowel in there, surface my spoil board, drill new holes, and drive on. And okay, fine. If you want to get upset with me for drilling holes in my spoil board, which I found a little bit bizarre because I mean it's my spoil board, then okay, fine. It's I don't know, it's a fun life. And yeah, about all you can do is laugh. Now, I did get some interesting comments in the comment section, and I'll address a couple of them right off the bat. Um, IL Peleg came up with a good one, and he's absolutely right. The ability to define multiple work offsets allows you to set up multiple places on your table where you could run the same G code and have the machine cut in different regions. Thus, with a good design, if you want, you can set up a new workpiece in the near left area when the machine is working at the top right and vice versa, or just set up multiple work pieces and move between them running the same G code each time. And that's exactly it, that's exactly one of the things that I kind of alluded to as I turn on my light here. That's kind of one of the things that I alluded to when I said we can make more complex uh, fixtures if we wanted to. More on this fixture pretty soon because that sparked a little controversy as well. But you have the ability to set up. I'm going to try something, okay? I've got a second camera hooked up, and here's what we're going to try. We're going to try switching over to the second camera. Hey, it worked. What do you know? Okay, we're over here on the spoil board, and I've got this simple fixture set up here. I could set up another one over here and mount a second piece over here and set up another one over here and mount another piece over here. Then use my first offset, set, mount my piece of material and run that G code. Then when it's done, I can move over here, go into my next offset and run this next piece on the same G code, and then do the same thing over here when that one's finished. That's exactly right. And I wanted to kind of get into that, get back to this camera. Okay, here we go. I kind of wanted to get into that in today's video, but decided no, that deserves its own video. So I'm going to be doing that probably next year. Okay. Um, it's, and okay, let's get on to this little simple fixture I made here. A lot of people would argue that it's not a fixture, and I got that comment a lot in PMs and emails. It's not really a fixture, it's just an alignment area. Yeah, okay, different strokes for different folks. I mean, it's six of one and half a dozen of the other. We're just talking semantics now. But um, I did that mainly just to demonstrate how to use it once you have that set up. Um, And like I said before, that's probably the simplest fixturing technique you're ever going to run into. And it's just simply for alignment. But conceptually, theoretically, there is no difference between those pins there and putting, say, a machinist vise mounted on the table, because they both work the same way. What it is, it's more about creating a known location within the controller software that you can go to accurately every time. And it's less about what is actually there. I mean, 10 holes and 4 dowel pins in one corner of the spoil board was just done to demonstrate how to use it, you know? But, you missed it. I was just talking about you. You're absolutely right about setting up different zones and different fixtures and different places where you can cut. So it's, it can be as simple or as complex as you want for it to be. John Thompson has an excellent point here. It's allowing you to affix a job to a particular place as a fixture does. Absolutely 100%. Uh, there is no uh, there's no specific thing that needs to go there, and there is no one size fits all fixture. If I was going to be carving on a piece that's oh 2 feet long and an inch and a half wide, I probably wouldn't use that. That more than likely isn't going to be the appropriate fixture for that, because it would be easy to get it out of alignment. But that's not the only fixture I'm ever going to use, and it's not the only jig I'm going to use. Another comment was that it would be easy with just those couple 3 points of contact to get things off if something isn't 100% square. And that is true. But that's why I mentioned in the video, if the piece isn't 100% square, you need to make sure of your work orientation. If, for instance, on that piece that I demonstrated in the video, and Rob Sandstrom, you were right, it is leopard wood. Now I'm going to show it to you here in a minute. As it, the orientation of that piece is vertical. So it needs to be straight vertically. So I push it all the way up against the 2 pins on my along my y-axis. And then it only has to touch one of the pins down along the x-axis, and that makes sure that it's pulled down far enough. Now, I do have a piece to show you that proves that that type of a fixture does work and it does have its place. And that is the good old Pirate. This is 16 different tool paths cut over the course of 6 days. Excuse me, 8 days. 8 days to include the surfacing tool path. I never used the touch plate to locate my X and Y axis on this piece of material, not one time. I put a perfectly square, or as square as I can get it, block of plywood. In fact, it's the one I demonstrated in the video. I put that into that corner location, fastened it down with the painter's tape and CA glue method. And once I got it fastened down, I removed the pins and used my touch plate, as I demonstrated, went into G59 on the offsets tab and used the touch plate to set the X and Y 0 on that perfectly square piece of material in that known location. Now, I have a question here. It said from Brooks Martin, who said, when you saved your offsets, absolute or relative coordinates. This is one of the reasons why I said to check with your machine's manufacturer or your software publisher, either one, because some of them call them by different names. Mach 4 doesn't use absolute or relative coordinates. They use machine coordinates and work coordinates, but they both mean the same. Absolute coordinates is machine coordinates, and relative coordinates is work coordinates. When this position was set, when I saved the offset, it saved it in absolute coordinates, machine coordinates. So that way it knows exactly where to go every time I plug in that G59. And again, I did not set the XY0 once on this piece at all. And all I did was applied that G59 offset. It went straight to it and it cut in the right place. This was the test piece for the Pirate that's coming up. The piece that I surfaced in today's video is the real Pirate. And again, I'm not using the XY portion of the touch plate at all for this. I'm using the G59 offset to set the XY0. And this piece is not square. All I have to do is make sure that edge is up against those two pins on my Y-axis. So that's what I mean. So, okay, here. IL Peleg says, I don't think this is right. When talking about relative coordinates, means when you issue a move command, it is relative to where before it is as opposed to absolute. Yes. When you say what coordinate you want to move to, yes, you're absolutely right. You can move in those type of coordinates as well. However, some control software does call machine coordinates absolute coordinates. Some software. Those are G90 for absolute and G91 for relative. Yes, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely right. Let me get over here and I'm going to screen share Mach 4. And please understand, Mach 4, what is going on? It should be stop sharing. It should be going to the other one. Share screen, going to this one. Share. Okay, there we go. Keep in mind, this version of Mach 4 is not hooked up to a CNC, so everything is going to read 0 and I can't change it. It won't even simulate running a bit. Over here in the offsets tab, all of my offsets, for instance, read 0. When I set an offset here on my G59, for example, these are in machine coordinates. So when I home my CNC router, it's going to go to, in machine coordinates, X0 and Y0, which is as far forward as it'll go on the machine and as far left as it'll go on the machine. And that's machine coordinate X and Y0. When I set that G59 offset, it didn't set the offset from the edge of the spoil board. It set that offset from X0, Y0 on my machine table. Why is that important? Let me stop sharing and I'll show you. I got to get a better mixer here so I don't have to keep doing this. Pro Stream, let's go over there. There we go. And let's see. No, you can't see it. Let me bring the camera down. My home X0, Y0 was right about here. Whereas my spoil board is about 7.5 inches back from the front of the machine. So there is a distance of about 7 inches and then about an inch over, inch and a quarter over from the edge of the machine's travel. That's where my spoil board starts. And I did that because of vertical work holding, which I haven't gotten into yet. So when I created that G59 offset, it went way up here. That's why I used the touch plate to set that XY position, was because it's way back here and off to the side. It's not up anywhere near close to the actual X0, Y0 in machine coordinates of my machine. So let's go back over here. And let's see here. Okay, let's see here. IL says homing basically sets where is the 0, 0, 0 for machine coordinates. Yes, and each working coordinate sets an offset relative to machine coordinates. Absolutely, 100%. So when I apply that G59 offset, and I just picked G59 because it was easy. It didn't have anything already in it. When I set that G59 offset, it gave it I used the touch plate and it marked the X and Y location from that corner of the spoil, or excuse me, let me go back because I did this a few weeks back. Yes, it set that position with the touch plate. I'm sorry. Okay, Larry Brown wants to know, how do offsets work with G-code sender and my Bob Evo 3? Contact Bob. I don't know anything about G sender. I don't know anything about universal G code sender. I don't know anything about Centroid CNC. I don't know anything about any of the other control software. I know Mach 3 and learning Mach 4. That's why I haven't done any kind of reviews on Mach 4s. I'm still learning it. I'm still used to Mach 3. Mach 3's instructions are different from Mach 4. Get into the manual. It shows you in that user guide how to set up the offsets and then access them in Mach 3. I have very, very, very limited experience with work offsets in Mach 3 because, as I said at the beginning of today's video, I thought it was overcomplicating something that didn't need to be that complicated. That you mount your material, you set your X, Y, 0 when you go. I was completely and totally relying on that three-way touch plate to set my X, Y, 0 should the power go out or anything else. Well, in changing over to Mach 4 and kept hearing about work offset, it got me into looking it up and looking into this. And I realized that it wasn't complicating things. It was actually making them easier. I do tend to use one corner of my spoil board more than I do the other. And so setting up a fixture is actually pretty smart to do, and it doesn't have to be in the spoil board. I mean, I use auxiliary spoil boards all the time. When for instance, when I do a two-sided project, I mount a piece of plywood to the machine table and that's where I drill my locating dowel holes, is into that piece of plywood. So, it mounting auxiliary spoil boards and using fixtures and things like that is, you know, that's just par for the course. So, let's see. Lewis Stanton wants to know, what's the learning curve from Mach 4 for an old man? Well, you see it right here. I mean, um, if you're not used to anything else, it will be easier than if you're already used to a control software like me. I'm used to Mach 3, been using it since 2015. Um, but the difference between Mach 3 and Mach 4 is just enough to matter. It's just enough to make a difference. So I had to unwrap my head around certain concepts and rewrap them around other concepts, mainly because they changed where the controls were, and they eliminated a lot of things in there that just weren't necessary for a home hobbyist. And that's why they have Mach 4 Hobby and Mach 4 Industrial. It's not just because of money, as a lot of people think. There are a lot of options in industrial that are needed that just are not needed in a home hobby situation. Most of us aren't using vacuum tables with plywood loaders and automatic tool changers and things like that. So we just don't have the need for the ability to control all that stuff. So let's see here. Let me get back up here into the questions and find them. Robert Dymock wanted to know, do you know much about Centroid control? No, but thank you for asking. No, I've never used it. I've never had occasion to use it, so I don't know anything about it. Jim Brown says, when drilling the 1/4-inch holes, how much do you allow for the pins to fit? I didn't allow anything. I went straight down with a 1/4-inch upcut end mill, drilled them 1/2 inch deep, and ordered those pins off of Amazon, and they slip in there nice and tight. So I didn't make any kind of allowance at all. If anything, the MDF will give a little bit. And I don't drive them all the way in, because let me go grab one here real quick. These pins are, I believe, 1.25 inches long. I may be wrong. Yeah, they're 1.5 inches long. These pins are pretty stout little son of a guns. I don't leave them in there, and I don't hammer them all the way down into the spoil board. I just slip them into place far enough to where they're standing upright and not leaning over crooked. And then I reference against them. And I tend to use CA glue and masking tape, or painter's tape rather, not masking tape. Although I also will drill and drive screws, excuse me. So, and then those dowels come right out. In one of those emails where I got yelled at, it's like, why are you using steel dowels? Aren't you? What happens if you run into it with a bit? You take them out before you run any tool paths. They're not there to hold anything in place. They're just there for alignment. So, what can I say to that? Let's see here. Excuse me. Would-be says, if I move my gantry manual with all disconnected, once I turn on the machine, I have to set up a new home. Is this normal? Yes, and I addressed that in today's video. When you turn on the your controller software, whether your controller software saves your last location or not, it doesn't know if you came by and manually moved one of your axes. Now, on the Gatton CNC, I had knobs that I could turn the lead screws. I couldn't do it when the controller was powered up, but I did it quite often. I would move my gantry back or the x-axis all the way over to the left so that I could use the spoil board as a work table because my other shop was even smaller than this. So the controller doesn't know if you've come along and manually moved that gantry or your x-axis or even lifted up your z-axis. So every time you fire up your machine, you should rehome the machine. And yes, all of this depends upon you having homing and living limit switches. So, you know, and I just got used to it. I used to think homing and limit switches um, were just more of a pain than they're worth. But then when I got them and started using them, I realized what I had been missing out on. And now I just don't have that issue. So, I mean, the machine needs to know where it is. Let me throw something else at you. If you use a touch plate to set your Z0 and you don't have homing or limit switches, if you have ever touched off that bit and instead of retracting upward, that bit has tried to plunge down through your spoil board or your touch plate or something, it's because it thinks its home position is down from where its current position is. That's something homing switches will completely eliminate. It thinks that the home position is down below its current position, and that's where it's going after it gets done touching off. So, okay, I'm missing a question here. And IL is helping the guy out. And that's fine, but okay. Just joined. My machine goes to home and then pushes off 10 millimeter in every axis, which is shown in the software CNCJS. Is that 10 millimeter offset now considered home? Yes. That offset is now considered home. And that's mine does approximately the same thing. I don't know if it's 10 millimeters. It may be less. It may be more. I'm not sure. But the machine will, in Z, for instance, it will go all the way to the top of its travel and trigger that homing switch. Then it'll back off a little bit. And the same thing with X and Y. They move simultaneously over to this corner of the machine, and one will trigger, it'll stop, the other one will continue, and when it triggers, it stops, then they both back off that amount. And that amount is set in the software. Once they have backed off to where they're not triggering that switch anymore, that's when Mach 4 anyway, it sets all the, at that current position, that is 0. So that is home. So yes. Let's see here. Yes, and IL is 100% correct there, assuming you're running within the context of G54. When I said in the video, most people use G54 without even knowing it, that's because that is the default work offset for most control software. I can't think of any control software that doesn't default to G54. And if you've never got into your work offsets or fixture offsets, chances are you using G54. And every time you set your work XY0, you're changing that G54 offset. Absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Absolutely not a thing wrong with it. So, let's see. Todd says, what happens if you hit a steel pin? Your bit breaks and sparks a lot. Just ask me. Yeah. That's why you take the steel pins out before you. Never mind. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Let's see here. Martin Forrest says, hi from UK. Please explain in more detail how the offsets are saved and recovered for use later. I can only tell you about Mach 4, Martin, and even then it's Avid CNC's version of Mach 4. Let me go back here and let's see, screen share again. And I'll go over here. Once I, for instance, let me go over here to G58 offset. If I manually enter, whoops, come on, G58 of 2.0 and a Y offset of 10.0 and tap enter, at G58 offset of 2 inches over in X and 10 inches over in Y is now saved. It's automatic. I can go ahead and close Mach 4. Yes, exit. And now I'll go ahead and load it again. And it's going to give me all kinds of error messages. Let me drag it over here. Well, it won't let me drag it over here. It's going to give me error messages because it's not hooked up to a machine or a smooth stepper, which is what Avid CNC uses. Okay, now I can drag it back over here now that it's done with all the warning messages. And I'll enable, go over to offsets. It's still there. It applies it automatically. I don't have to do any special saving or anything. It's there and it's going to stay there until I go back and overwrite it. So that's how that goes. So it's there until I overwrite it. So let me stop sharing here. I don't know if you pronounce your name Jace or JC. If it's Jace E or JC, do know you can run your CNC router without knowing any of those G codes. It's better if you do learn some of it, so you're on the right track. But strictly speaking, it's not 100% necessary that you know what all those G codes mean. Okay. It is better if you do, but it's not 100% necessary. Lewis Denton says, I look at T-Tracks as a hold-in-place system. Does it really hold work down? I like the flexibility of the system if it will hold it down. Yes. Most people use T-Track in conjunction with clamps that are screwed on from the top. You put a T-bolt into the T-Track and, well, actually, these T-Tracks are sized that the head of a 1/4 inch 20 bolt will slide right into it. Drop the clamp over it, use a wing nut or a knob to tighten it down to hold the material down. I don't use them for that. I use them to mount a fixture. I do use the 1/4 inch 20 thread per inch bolts. Slide the bolt, put the bolt in the fixture and slip the head into the T-track and mount it that way. Clamp it down to the T-track. I don't like vertical clamps. They get in the way and I just don't trust them. But I use it for fixturing, for locating fixtures. That's also why I went with uneven spacing on the T-track, because there are certain fixtures that I want to be able to put into one place on the table only. I don't want it to be able to fit anywhere else. So I can use, say, a G57 and put that fixture in place. It'll only be in one place. I can set that in Mach 4 and it knows where that fixture is. So, and that's another thing that I meant about coming up with more complex fixtures. Thank you. Let's see here. Let me scoot back up here. I know I've missed a bunch of questions walking away from the monitor. Dave Blackburn says the learning curve is about the same so far, just way different. Yes, Mach 4 is just different enough from Mach 3 that it's different enough to matter, you know. Russell Faraday says, I have not used or looked at machine coordinates. Is an access 0 the point the home switch triggers, or the point that Mach 3 backs off the switch to? It's the latter. It's the point that it backs off of the switch to. When you go to home or return to 0 in machine coordinates, you should not touch those limit switches. It considers that enough unsafe area off of the machine. So it backs off that amount. Then it sets the 0 where that is after backing off of the switch. So, and most people don't use machine coordinates. Very few people do. So it's usually used when you're setting up fixtures and such, because the machine needs to know where it is and where it's going. And that was part of that explanation about the difference between the XY0 in machine coordinates after homing and the XY0 of the workpiece after you mount it. Get my head out of there. It's that difference is the work offset in machine coordinates. That has nothing to do with Vectric software. It has nothing to do with any CAD CAM software. That's just applied by the controller on the machine itself. So, let's see. Russell Faraday says 2 years running, done lots of big 3D stuff, just starting to learn about G codes and realizing how helpful they can be. They can be very helpful. Well, not only that, it's a way of double checking to make sure that the code is doing what you want it to do. If you know how to tell where a feed rate is, or what a spindle speed is, or when it's going to turn on the spindle, how long that dwell is, and when it's going to shut off the spindle, if you can look and see that, if you can tell what a rapid move is, then everything is, becomes a lot easier, and you can double check. See, IL Peleg says often one of the work offsets would be assigned to some known point on a vise or some similar holding device. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, this little series of holes with the pins in it was just an example to demonstrate how to use it. Now, one of my goals is to make a fixture that will hold a guitar neck blank that has a headstock glued to it with a 15-degree break angle on it. So I'll have a flat piece and then another piece at a 15-degree angle. Well, I'll need a fixture to hold that neck with that headstock pointing down to cut the top and mill in a truss rod and then eventually, do the fretboard. And I'll need another one to hold it with that headstock pointing up to carve the back of the neck and get up and do some machine work up on the headstock itself. So I'll need fixtures to hold all that into place. Rather than just start out with something outlandish like that, I just started off with something very simple and very easy. Would I use this? Well, I am for these projects, I used it for this. And I'm going to use it on the real Pirate, continue to use it. In fact, not this afternoon. I got to work under the house today. Tomorrow, I will be getting back on the real Pirate and cutting some more on that. So, and I'll be using those little pins to do that. So, but also know that you can put those location pins or even some permanent dowels if you want to. And for example, let's say you take a piece of plywood. You got a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that you want to put in a specific location on your table and put dowels in a row like I did here. You can certainly do that. Then take that off of the table and be able to do whatever you'd like, put that fixture back up. And so long as you have a way of referencing that fixture on your table, whether it be hard stop or something else, you can reference to that fixture first time, every time. And, locating pins is just one method of doing it. You can create a fixture that you can put up on your machine that uses vertical toggle clamps or horizontal toggle clamps. If you have watched the YouTube channel Bro in Wood, he uses pieces of PVC pipe in large holes drilled into his spoil board. If you've watched Jay Bates, he uses large holes with aluminum bench dogs. And he has created a very intricate spoil board with lots of holes all over the place in it so that he can do much the same thing these little 1/4 inch dowels did. I am so Scottish. That's how I went with the little steel dowels rather than buying a bunch of $35 a piece bench dogs. I'm cheap. I mean, that's all there is to it. But today's video was more about finding, or was more about the concept of setting up a known location on your spoil board and less about what's at that location, because you can put anything there. And no, it's not one size fits all. It's one size fits most. And that's fine. If I need to do something that fixture won't do, I'll make another fixture. I mean, I have a CNC router. Nothing is out of the realm. Everything is wide open. So, let's see here. Had another, okay, yeah, Ronald Cool says, had some aluminum bench dogs and they are nice. Yeah, they are nice. Pricey, but then again, um, if $20 or $30 is a price breaker, maybe I need to be thinking about a different hobby if Okay, Norm Peterson says, just loaded 11.5. Are cutting parameters the same for upcut and downcut bits? For the most part, yes. Why do they just have end mills? They have never had a category for upcut or downcut. That's always been up to you. You'd have to put that in the notes. Cutting parameters are basically the same. There may be cases where you would want to go a little slower with a downcut than you would with an upcut. Uh, as far as that initial plunge. But for the most part, the parameters are the same, you know. JC, you're absolutely right. Having a known, reliable starting point for jobs makes so much sense. I have had so many questions, and I have seen so many questions in various Facebook groups and on various forums about, was in the middle of a carve and the power went out. How do I find my XY0? Well, if you're using a system like this or a fixture like this, you no longer have that concern so long as you have set it up properly, you can come in and, well, for instance, again, this was cut over the course of 8 days. And every day I took this, I would cut the tool path, take it off of the machine, take it in the house, and pour that resin. Then the next day, bring it out, put those pins in place, register it, mount it, cut the next tool path, take it off the machine, take it in the house, and pour the next resin. And yes, I shut off the controller, I shut off the CNC, shut off the air conditioner, the lights, everything. I went in the house, did my thing, had dinner, went to bed, come out the next morning and cut the next one. It's a known position on your table that you can't lose unless you overwrite it. Now, again, check with your machine's manufacturer, check with your, if you use a generic control software like Universal G Code Sender or G Sender or something like that, check with them. Look in their support forums. See how you do that, how to set it up. Because while Mach 4 saves this for me automatically, not all softwares do that. You will have to get in and save that setting. And each one has its own way of doing it. So, let's see. Yeah, Todd is absolutely right. The hardest part of a power failure is finding where you were in the G code at the time of power loss or whatever failed. Absolutely. And even if you didn't lose power, you broke a bit, but you weren't watching where it happened. Where did that bit break? And how far back in the G code do you have to go to find it? I mean, there are ways, and each software title is different. Some will run from like, if you know it shut down on line 315, that's not too bad, but it's just a number I pulled out of thin air. You can go to line, say, 314 and set it to run from here. So it skips the rest of it and runs from that point. But again, if you have a long old file, that's 80,000 lines of G code, oh my God, now I got to find where the heck this was. There are ways of doing it, but so. Let's see. When you say override, do you mean manually move the spindle when you lose the XY0? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't think I ever mentioned overriding. Let me go back and make sure that this was not in response to somebody else's question or answer. Let's see. Okay. Run that past me again, if you wouldn't mind, please. Martin Pearson says, what I do is send the machine to the work offset, say G57, and once the machine reaches that point, I switch back to G54, so I never overwrite the offsets. I'll have to look into that. I've heard of other people doing just that, but I don't know how you could. I don't know if you could do that. Could you do that? Could you overwrite a G59 accidentally? I don't know. I'm asking because I literally do not know if it's possible to do that. If it is, let me know. Yeah, 6 hours in on a 3D file is just a guess. There is a gentleman in a Facebook group that I haven't been in a while, and I can't remember his last name, but his first name is Kim. And he said the longest file he's ever run, and I believe he's somewhere over in Europe, He said the longest file he had ever run was 24 million lines of code, and it was a 56-hour carve. And he's on an industrial machine. This is at a company. And they would run it in 10-hour shifts. So, and we're talking huge industrial equipment, but they didn't run 3 shifts per day. So when you get a file that big, yeah. Okay, here we go. If you set the XY so it's set, if you lose power, turn it back on. If you manually move the XY to get it out of the way, do you use your preset? No, you won't use like the G59 work offset if you have set it up. But you will have to put it back into G59, for example, and you may use G57 or 58, whatever. And then you will have to reset your Z0. Even if you, for instance, if I'm running, let me go back here and share. And I don't remember if Mach 3 is this way, but I know Mach 4 is this way. Let me stop sharing your comment here. If I'm running along and all of a sudden I want to stop, if I click that red stop button right there to stop running the file, I now have to rehome the machine, restart everything, just like I just turned everything on. I have lost everything. I have not, however, lost any of these fixture offsets. That's going to stay there. But I now have to rehome. I have to go back into G15 or well, what did I set? G58 I set on this one here. And, ouch. All of that gets lost. I have to start from scratch. So this doesn't get lost, but my application does. It starts up here and G54, which is the default. So go back over here to program run. So stop sharing. Yeah, Todd, I've done the longest carve I've ever had was 14 hours. That was back before I knew what I was doing. I just said, I got to stay out here for 14 hours. It was like, I think my first, maybe my second 3D carve. And I really, didn't know what was going on or what I was doing. So let's see here. Okay, so that answered the question. Yes, okay. Russell Faraday says I've run 370,000 lines on a 3D file and it was only 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. You don't think about how many lines of code it takes to do some things until you get under the hood and start looking at it. I mean, I opened up that text file, that G-code text file. I didn't know what the heck I was looking at. But I opened it up, looked at it, and said, yeah, that's nothing I want to get into, and immediately closed it. Well, now I'm starting to learn some of the G-code. Let me see. Do I have any G-code on this computer to show some folks? No, I don't have any G-code on this computer. Okay. Well, it was a shot. I'll load some, and we can get into it on another day. Okay, JC wants to know, how long have you been doing CNC? I built my first machine in 2015. And before that, I couldn't even spell CNC. So I built my first machine. I discovered Home Hobby CNC right around 2007, 2008, something like that. And I had no doubt in my mind that I could build the structure, but I do not have a head for electronics. I've never gotten into it. I've never tried to study it. I'm a wood guy. So when they started talking about controllers and breakout boards and drivers and power supplies, it's not that long before people start sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher. You know, it just, mm-mm. So um, that basically got me out of it. And I watched from afar until Dave Gatton introduced me to the Xylotex Drive Box, which was the plug and play system. And from then I was hooked. I mean, I can plug and play. So great. And from there, I never looked back. I downloaded the trial version of VCarve Pro 7.5 and bought VCarve Pro 8.0, and I never looked back. And I've been having fun with it and just work on it constantly and just go for the gusto. Let's see here. Another question. What kind of processing power on a laptop or PC is needed for running G-code? I'm looking at getting a secondhand PC laptop. If it'll run Windows 10, it'll run whatever control software you want to use, basically. Windows 10 needs more processing power than any CNC control software. And Todd is 100% correct. Be careful of a laptop because they are all about power conversation. They are all about power conservation. um, and there's probably not quite, but almost a bazillion settings that are hard to track down that are meant to save power on a laptop. Personally, I have a desktop computer. Thank you, Sargon. I have a Dell desktop that was built in 2016, and it is perfect for the job. In fact, I have more problems with Windows 10 wanting to go online and update Windows Defender than I do anything else. I would like to be able to turn Windows Defender completely off so it stops trying to update itself, but I haven't figured that out yet. So you don't need a whole heck of a lot of computer to run G-code. Jack in the shop is right. Raspberry Pi can run G-code. And there may be um, there may be, I don't know, will an Arduino run G-code? I don't know if that's got quite enough. Now it's got to be. I think most control software has to be either Windows or Linux based. I may be wrong there, but yeah, you don't need much. The old now Mach 3 that would run on Windows XP. I ran up until I got the Avid CNC. I ran an old Hewlett Packard desktop that I got for free, and I ran Mach 3 on it just fine, and it ran Windows XP. It could not go online. Its whole reason for living was to run Mach 3 in Windows XP. And I mean, I formatted the hard drive, loaded a fresh, brand new copy of Windows XP with all the updates, loaded Mach 3, unplugged it from the internet, and it never went back on. And that was one of the fastest loading, quicker running computers I've got because nothing was running in the background. It could not go online. So let's see. You can remove Defender. I'm going to look into that because I'd like to get rid of it on this computer because it's nothing but a pain. All righty. I think I got everybody's question. If I did not get your question, please, please, please let me know. Put it in the comment section here. I think I addressed everybody here. Yeah, there was one other slight bone of contention, and I think I answered it, but I don't remember. And that was why I used the touch plate. Let me do this here again. And I'm going to get better at this, I promise. Boink. And that was why I used the touch plate to set my X and Y 0 here and on the workpiece after I got it mounted up here. As I showed in the video, I put my dowels over here in the corner, upside down, and see, got one here, and I think I put one about right there. This is the piece that I used to set the X and Y 0, and I showed this in the video. I know this is square because this was a spacer that I used. It was a jig that I used in working on headstocks for guitars. So I know it's square as I can make it, as square as a CNC will cut it out. This is what I used. I mounted it down with the tape and CA glue, pulled these pins out, and that's what I used my touch plate for, to set the X and Y 0 of this corner. That is the only time I've used that touch plate or adjusted the XY 0 for this fixture. That's it. I never did it again. And that's why the numbers on that G59 offset was such a long, convoluted set of numbers, is because it set the location, not me. So it has 4-digit accuracy, 4-digit resolution, not me. So that's why I did it. Let's see. See, Jack says, I have Windows 11 and Linux machines. Well, okay, there you go. I mean, there's, like I say, different strokes for different folks. There is more than one way to skin the marsupial or mammal of your choice. I mean, and if it works for you, great. That's something about you're going to find about this channel, Jack, is I'm not trying to tell you the best way to do something. I'm not trying to tell you the only way to do something. I'm just trying to show everybody how I did something. And you can take it from there and run in any directions. If you see something that you like the idea of but don't like my execution, by all means, go for it. Just, get going. All righty, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and, okay, Thomas Grimm, thanks for helping me. Here's a topic for you: how to get current Windows computer completely offline. When I discover that, I will let you know. Let's see. That is part of it. That the licensing forces you to go online. Once it's licensed, you're cool. But Mach 4 does not require you to go online. It requires you to go online to retrieve your license. But there is, and they have instructions for licensing Mach 4 on a machine that can't go online. They know that some people completely deactivate that. So there is a way for you to go copy the license file onto a flash drive and go plug it into the machine that can't go online. There's a way to do that. So, okay. Let's see. Um, Yes, you did write on the video itself that you did not need the touch plate in this case either. Like I said, I did it for 2 reasons. 1, to eliminate human error, and 2, because I knew it was taking that measurement in machine coordinates, and my machine coordinate 0 is way away from where that fixture is. So I wanted to reduce the amount of variables and just set it and forget it. That's why I did it that way. If you want to do do it another way, again, there is more than one way of skinning the mammal of your choice. So, whatever works for you is perfect. So, let's see here. Done, done, done. All right. Thank you, everybody. The next video is going to be the final pirate, and that'll be in 2 weeks. Next week will be open Q&A. Ask me anything about. There's more than one way to skin a cucumber, y'all. Next week will be an open Q&A. If I did not get to your question, please save it up for next week. Let's see. Members only. Members only live stream tomorrow night, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you then. I do have something to talk about. We're going to talk with Brooks a little bit about one of his issues, and I've got a couple of other things to bring up. And yeah, see you guys tomorrow night. If you'd like more information on how to become a channel member, click the join button down in the description of this video. Panel will pop up and a video will play, tell you all about becoming a channel member if you choose to do so. There is no such thing, JC. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. I don't like to have long, drawn out conversations in the comments because I think it is too easy to miss things or read into something that just isn't there in text. You can't tell. I mean, you miss inflection, you miss body language, you miss everything in text. I have these live Q&As so you can get a real-time answer. You're not waiting for me to sit back down at the computer. And that's why I do these. Not only that, you guys are just a lot of fun. So, all right. Thanks very much. Have a great week, everybody, and go out and do something cool. Go make some chips. Get out of here, will you? Have a good one. Thank you very much for all your support. I appreciate it.